Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Bet Right Sports Betting Podcast presented by the Six Pack Coverage Media Network. It's your host, Jeff Farrell, here with my co-host, Andrew Tanzi. Welcome to episode 3 of our NFL Division by Division Futures Breakdown. We are recording this on Thursday, July 14th. It will be in your feeds in a few days, and today we're going to be going over the NFC South, featuring the Falcons, Panthers, Saints, and Bucs. We'll talk about our predictions for how each team's season will play out, any futures bets that we have in the pending wagers, any value that we see on the board now that we're eyeing up, and then we will finish with maybe a few prop thoughts and give you everything you need to know to get ready for the upcoming season. Rue, how you doing? Episode 3, getting closer.
Yeah, when this is posted, we will be 1 week closer. That's all we can do is keep taking it 1 week at a time. So recording these podcasts and getting them posted is a good a mile marker for each step along the way. Yeah.
Churning out a little bit of progress each week.
Yep.
Getting there.
Yep.
All right. So the NFC South, overarching themes, takes on the division, stuck out to me, I guess. Bucs versus everyone. They're the biggest favorite to win an NFL division. They're currently like minus 290 to minus 300. They actually lost both games against the Saints last year, but still finished 13-4 overall and won this division easily by 4 games. So I think it's, they're a big favorite and it makes sense. I think it's hard to make a case for any of the other teams to win the division, but we'll see if we find value on any of them. Any main takeaways for you in this division? It's not necessarily the most fun division, but I guess now that Baker's on the Panthers gives it a little bit more juice for me because they could be a fun team.
Yeah. So I'm kind of in the same boat, not too excited about this division. I'm kind of looking at it. It's like a sandwich. It's like you got the Bucs at the top and the Falcons
at the bottom.
Falcons at the bottom. It's like, that's the bread. It's like, you know what you're getting. The Bucs should win this division. Yes. The Falcons really have no shot. They're probably going to finish last. So you know what you're getting. But then in the middle, you got the meat and the sauce in there, or whatever you got in there. It's like, this is where the sandwich gets a little bit exciting in there. There could be some volatility. The Saints have some potential, and like you said, Baker coming over definitely makes things a little more interesting. So not too fun from a perspective of multiple teams having a shot to win. I mean, you could argue the Saints maybe have an outside chance to win, but it'd be an uphill battle to take down the Bucs here.
Yeah, and the other thing I did find was the schedules are actually pretty interesting. So we'll talk about this, I guess, when we get into each team individually. But like the Bucs start off with just the 4 absolute hardest. I mean, at the Cowboys, at the Saints, against the Packers, and against the Chiefs. Like, there's a realistic chance that the Bucs start like 1-3 would be a decent start. Like 0-4 is possible. So like we're saying that the Bucs are obviously a huge favorite in the division. Like, I don't think anybody would be shocked if the Saints have a 2-game lead 4 games into the season, especially if they beat them head to head. So it could be at least a little bit interesting because the Bucs schedule really gets soft towards the end of the year, and obviously it starts off with just a gauntlet. So, all right. Ready to jump into each team?
Let's do it.
All right, start with those Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like we said, minus 300 to win the NFC South, minus 600 to make the playoffs. Their win total is at 11.5, minus 110 the over and the under. Tom Brady obviously retired, then he unretired. Then I got a bunch of money on the Bucs futures. Hopefully some other people out there did as well. I believe they were like plus 150 to win the division at one point, and now they're minus 300. So pretty good value there. Some coaching changes. Bruce Arians retired, and he is reportedly going to stay retired. We'll see if that happens. And then defensive coordinator Todd Bowles will take over as the new head coach. Player changes. They lost a couple pieces on the offensive line. Alex Kappa and Ali Marpet are both gone. And then OJ Howard, Ronald Jones, and Rob Gronkowski also gone. So a lot of pieces missing from the offense. Obviously, Gronk could come back at any point. I don't think anybody would be surprised if it got to like week 9 or 10 and he decided to give it one last run with Brady. And then they did make some offseason acquisitions. Right guard Shaq Mason was signed. Defensive tackle Akeem Hicks from the Bears. They also got wide receiver Russell Gage from the Falcons, and they drafted a guard in the 2nd round. And then Chris Godwin, their slot wide receiver, is currently, I've heard like somewhere around weeks 4 to 8 is probably like sometime in October. Obviously, he tore his ACL towards the end of last year. Russell Gage can fill that role to a degree, but I think they'd obviously like to have Godwin out there now that Antonio Brown is officially gone. So where are you at with the Bucs here? Do you have any bets on them? Is this just kind of a team that's a big favorite and the market says they're a big favorite, so there's not much to do?
So like you, I also got them when the Brady news broke, so I didn't feel the need to really put any other bets in on them. I got a good amount on them to win the division, a little bit on them to win the Super Bowl. So I was pretty much set there. Yeah. If I didn't have anything on them, what you kind of touched on it, which I was going to talk about, is the schedule is not. So those first 4 games, you get a little break with Atlanta. Then you go to Pittsburgh, which, you can say what you want about them. It's still not a gimme game going to Pittsburgh against what should be a tough defense. You play Carolina, and then you play Baltimore, the Rams. So it's just, you're playing these tough teams and you're getting them all back to back. So it really is a tough first half of the schedule. And that Saints game being sandwiched between an away game at Dallas and then having to go to Green Bay the week after, so they could easily find themselves in a hole early on. Now, I don't necessarily expect that to happen. Obviously haven't really dug into the week 1 games too much yet, but they're slight favorites at Dallas. I could see them winning that game. You kind of know what you're going to get with this Bucs team. I feel like obviously there's some changes here and there, but you still have Tom Brady, who's going to be great. The defense should be stout again against the run. They dealt with so many injuries in the secondary last year, which definitely caused some major issues for them. But Todd Bowles as head coach here, I expect them to be pretty solid on the defensive end. So at this point, division wise, it's their division to lose. And kind of like I said at the top, if all goes to plan, they should have no problem winning this division. They've lost to the Saints four of the last 4 games, and they still won the division. No, the Saints won 2 years ago, didn't they? Did the Saints
win division?
2 years ago when Breeze's last year, when the Bucs won the Super Bowl. Did the Bucs win the division that year?
I can't remember.
I'm not sure. I'll have to check that. But
they should probably figure out how to beat the New Orleans Saints.
But they lost to them twice last year and still won the division easily. So I am not too worried about the Bucs. That being said, I'm obviously not laying a minus 300 price for them to win the division right now. You could make a case for their over 11.5 wins. If you get through those first 4 games at 2-2, I think you're in a pretty good spot. Obviously, like I said, you got the Ravens and Rams back to back in weeks 8 and 9, but back into the season, it opens up a little bit with, you're ending the season with the Panthers and Falcons, which should be 2 easy matchups for them. So you could make a case for it, but I don't feel the need to force anything else.
I'd probably lean under if I had to make a case for it.
Really?
I think 10 or 11 is probably a little more likely than 12 or 13. I mean, there's just a lot of tough games. Like there's not that many.
There are, but you expect the Bucs to take care of business, and so if you're betting under, you're banking on them losing 6 games. You see, I mean, they're not going to. You can't make a case for them starting 0-4. You got to think they're going to win. You got the Packers.
I think 1-3.
Home, yeah, 1-3, really.
I don't know. The Saints game is tight. I mean, they just have to figure out how to beat the Saints. If they lose that Saints game, I think they could be in trouble. But
okay, yeah, that's fair.
But a lot of turnover on offense. They still do project to have one of the best offensive lines in the league. Obviously, Kappa Marpet retiring is not good, but you signed Shaq Mason, you still have Tristan Wirfs and Ryan Jensen, so I think they'll be okay there. On offense, you obviously still have Byron Leftwich, so there's continuity there. There was some reports last year that Brady and Bruce Arians were kind of butting heads on some things, so I think that Brady will kind of put his stamp on the offense for good this year. And I don't know if it'll be a ton different than last year. I think we kind of already saw Brady's imprints all over it, but I think they're going to have one of the best offenses in the league. Leonard Fournette's coming back in the backfield. So yeah, like you said, I think if the defense can stay healthy, and they're going to be one of the best offenses in the league, as long as Brady doesn't get hurt, they're going to be an 11-12 win team, and they're going to be in the playoffs and looking good. Is this a team? Sorry. I
was going to say, even if Godwin's not back week 1, you still have Mike Evans, obviously, and Russell Gage I
like Russell Gage a lot.
I feel like he's a pretty good fit for a Tom Brady offense. You still have Scotty Miller there as a possession guy. So there's, and he even had games where he was throwing to Cyril Grayson and Rashad Perriman last year. So, and Cameron Brate's a pretty competent tight end. So I'm not too worried about that. I'd be pretty surprised if Godwin played week 1, but
I'd be shocked.
Yeah. Who knows?
Okay. All right. So looking down the line a little bit, is this a team that you think you would be interested in like betting on them to achieve like Super Bowl, win the end? Like if you didn't have a bet on them already, I guess from earlier, would you look at them at like plus 300 to win the NFC, plus 700 to win the Super Bowl? Do you think that they match up well against like the Rams and the 49ers and Cowboys and some of these other teams in the NFC?
Yeah, for sure. And the thing you like about it is that they're probably more likely than a team. You can make a case for the Rams being a better team, but the Bucs, given their division, probably have a better shot at getting the 1 seed. And now
definitely.
I know the Rams obviously won in Tampa Bay last year, but it was on a last second broken coverage play. So it's not like they came into Tampa Bay and dominated them. So I think,
well, they did, and then they let them back in the game.
Well,
yeah, lost.
Yes, that's very true. Yeah. But yeah, so I think they are plus 300 to be the number 1 seed for the playoffs. And I think they're right around that to win the conference as well.
Yeah.
So I would probably lean them to get the 1 seed. So
maybe you wait till after the start of the season. Like maybe if they do start out 1-3, maybe that goes up to like plus 400. I don't think the market's going to like think that the Bucs stink or anything. Like we're not going to be fooled, but I think that you might get at least better value if the Rams start 3-1 and they start 1-3.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. But I think that would be my lean in terms of a future bet or down the line after postseason. And like I said, we're already in pretty good position with our Super Bowl bets. So no need to double dip there.
All right, let's move on to the New Orleans Saints. Second team in this division. Their win total is 8.5, depending on where you're looking. It's around plus 100 to the over for 8.5, plus 135 to make the playoffs, and they are 4-1 to win the NFC South. The big news in New Orleans was Sean Payton officially retiring. So defensive coordinator Dennis Allen will take over as the new head coach. Allen does have prior head coaching experience with the Raiders back in 2012 to 2014. Would you like to guess his record in 36 games as the Raiders head coach?
I know it was pretty bad. What, like 8-28 or something?
Nailed it. 8-28.
Yeah.
Not great. It was also like 8 years ago. It's like, I don't know how much it really impacts.
Who was his quarterback then?
Who would that have been? The Jamarcus Russell era?
I don't know.
It was definitely before Derek Carr, but I can't remember. Probably someone in between Russell and Carr. I'd have to look back. But yeah, whoever they were, they probably weren't very good if they only won 8 games. They did make a bunch of moves in the offseason. So they lost offensive tackle Teron Armstead. That was a big loss. And then safety Marcus Williams. They did sign safety Teron Matthew, the Honey Badger. So an upgrade there. They got Jarvis Landry as a slot receiver, Andy Dalton, the solid backup. And then they traded up to draft Chris Olave and offensive tackle Trevor Penning. We do have kind of clouds around Alvin Kamara's status. Is he going to be suspended? Is the NFL not going to do anything? Because who the heck knows anymore? I've heard anywhere from 4 to 2 to 6 games to 0 games thrown out. So at this point, who the heck knows? But there was an off the field incident back at the Pro Bowl, I believe, in Vegas. And then the most recent update on Jameis is that everything sounds like it's going well. He's practicing with no brace on the knee, reportedly looks good coming back from the ACL injury. So sounds like he should be good to go. Where are you at here on the Saints? Do you have any bets on them for the upcoming season?
All right. So real quick, I looked up the starting quarterback for the Raiders. So in 2012, we had Carson Palmer. 2013. Wow. If take a guess in 2013, if you guess this, I'll give you $100.
I can't even think of anyone. I have no idea.
It was a combination of Terrell Pryor, who started 9 games, Matt McGloin, who started 6, and
I was going to say Matt McGloin. I thought that was later. Matt Flynn?
Yeah, Matt Flynn started 1 game. Jeez. And then Derek Carr was 2014. So
okay, so we did get Carr as a rookie.
So you could kind of argue Dennis Allen never really had a chance, but yeah, so this Saints team is an interesting team because they have the potential to make some noise. Got off to a hot start last year, then lost 5 straight, then finished 4-1. So it was really kind of figuring out after Winston went down, kind of figuring things out. They went through that rough spurt there, so they could have easily been a playoff team. The defense should still be tops in the league, number 3 in defensive DVOA last year. Cam Jordan, Onyemata, and Davenport should be another stout defensive line. Top unit against the run last year. Number 7 in sack rate. Number 1 in rush DVOA. So yeah, they lost Marcus Williams and Malcolm Jenkins, but they probably upgraded a little bit with May and Matthew. O-line not great, and it's possible they're starting a rookie left tackle, so that's kind of a bit concerning. But
yeah,
getting Slant Boy back, Landry, Olave.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention Michael Thomas might actually play football this year.
Yes,
that'd be good.
Yes. So Winston should have plenty of options to kind of get rid of the ball quickly if needed. I think there's a good mix of guys there. I think I don't know. I don't expect this Kamara. This Kamara situation kind of feels like it's something that's going to get swept under the rug and pushed
totally agree.
And we're still going to be talking about it next offseason. That being said, I do just want to wait on a win total because I'm in the boat. I'm leaning their over win total right now. I like their schedule. I think they have a ton of winnable matchups on that. We've kind of talked about their success against the Bucs. So I think, winning 9 games last year with everything they went through, if Winston stays healthy this year and they can actually throw the ball on offense and you're not relying on Taysom Hill and Trevor Siemian throughout the season, you have a stout defense. So yeah, I think the Saints, they're a scary team, and they're that kind of team that could sneak in a wild card spot that no one really wants to play against. Like if you were like a Bucs or Packers type team who's a higher seed, and you got to play the Saints in the first round, that's kind of a scary matchup. So I think this team does
I'd much rather play a team like the Vikings than the Saints.
All right, relax. So yeah, I know you're pretty high on the Saints as well. So
yeah, I bet they're over this year. So I'm saying an over 8 at -135. If you want to get a little bit more risky, over 8.5 at plus money. Like you just said, I think like plus 140 to make the playoffs. I'm looking at a team that started last year 5-2 with Jameis Winston as a starter. Then obviously, like you said, he goes down. They go through a rough 4-6 stretch with Trevor Siemian, Taysom Hill, and the infamous Ian Book game thrown in there. So I mean, this is a team that won 9 games last year with, less than half a season of Jameis Winston. You bring him back, you give him better weapons on offense. He actually has Michael Thomas. Chris Olave projects to be a really good receiver. Jarvis Landry in the slot. And like you said, I'm not too concerned about the defense because there's pretty similar players. Dennis Allen's still going to be there, even though he's the head coach. And I'm not that worried about the Sean Payton leaving either. Like obviously he was an awesome offensive coach, but Pete Carmichael remains the offensive coordinator of this team. He's actually been the Saints offensive coordinator since 2009. So tons of continuity, tons of familiarity with the system that's been running in this organization. So I think that he's had plenty of time to learn under Sean Payton and can kind of keep this offense rolling and set Jameis up for success. Cause I thought he looked really good at the start of last season, wasn't really turning the ball over at all. So yeah, I think this is a team I'm really high on. In a weaker NFC, I could certainly see them grabbing the 6 or 7 spot and getting into the playoffs. I don't think they have enough of a ceiling to win the division. I think they probably need to beat the Bucs head to head twice and have a couple other things break their way. So I'd probably just lead toward them to make the playoffs at like plus 140 if I wanted to go over on them.
Yeah, that's fair.
And if you want to wait till the Kamara suspension gets announced, you may get a better number. If it is announced that he's suspended for 6 games, maybe the win total drops half a win. But at this point, I'm personally just kind of done waiting on the NFL to suspend guys or not, because who the heck knows what they're doing? So I just bet it myself, and I'll take the risk. And if he gets suspended, okay, they'll have to roll with Mark Ingram and Tony Jones and try and win some games. It's still a running back. It's not like it's the quarterback that's missing games. So.
Yeah. And contrary to the Bucs early in the season, 3 of their first 5 matchups, they get Atlanta, Carolina, and Seattle. So they have some winnable games early on. So they could jump out to a little bit of an early lead in the division, depending on what the Bucs do with their tougher matchup. So,
yeah, if you don't have a bet on this division right now, maybe you could even look at this and say, all right, I'm going to take the Saints at plus 400 now. Wait till after the first few weeks of the season, especially if the Saints beat the Bucs. Then you could maybe take the Bucs at a plus number price, and you're pretty much locked in unless the Panthers, hit the 99th percentile. Like one of these teams is winning the division, so could be a way to play it.
Yeah, so the way the schedule's set up, it opens up some different options, because after week 5, then it's got, Cincinnati, Arizona, Vegas, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Rams.
Yeah, that stretch is
Niners,
insane.
Bucks. So in a 4-week stretch, they have to go to Pittsburgh, come back home against LA. Then they go all the way to San Francisco and come back and play at Tampa Bay. That is a tough stretch.
Yeah, that's brutal. Yeah, there's like 8 potential playoff teams in a row.
Yeah,
that's
so
crazy.
I will make note of that and look to fade the Saints in a couple of those games.
Yeah, get your Saints bets in now if you want to bet them. Don't wait till the middle of the season.
Yes, correct. So what do you expect from Jameis Winston this year? So, we've seen the good and the bad with Winston. He was a guy who could rack up yards in Tampa Bay, but he would turn the ball over a ton. And then at the start of last year, it felt like he was throwing for less than 200 yards every game, but throwing 4 touchdown passes, and they were able to run the ball and play tough defense. What Winston are you expecting to see from this team? And what do the Saints need? Do they need a guy who's going to be throwing for 300 yards and a few touchdowns,
No.
or what?
I'm expecting and hoping to see a similar version of Jameis that we saw last year, just maybe a little bit. I think he can be a little bit better because he has better weapons, but I think he's going to be more of like an efficient passer, take his chances when he gets them. But I don't think they need someone to come in there and sling the ball 50 times and throw it downfield every play, because they have a really good defense. They have good players. I think that they're a good enough team where that he can just not throw 5 interceptions a game. I think they'll be pretty good. I don't want to see Bucks Jameis Winston. I want to see the Saints Jameis Winston.
But is that a good enough Jameis Winston to beat? So they've been solid against the Bucks, but you could always get in a shootout with the Bucks. You can get in a shootout with the Rams and some of these teams.
You might need it in a couple games here and there. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be able to throw the ball 25 times and they're going to win every game. So you might need it in a couple games. Yeah.
So the question is, when we get that version of Jameis in these come behind, need to be passing a lot type of games, are we going to get Jameis Winston from the Bucs where he has to throw 35 passes and he's going to be turning the ball over? I feel like that's what
possible.
That's what we really didn't see early in the season. I don't recall any shootout type games where he had to carry the load. So it's as great as he looked last year. It was over a 7-game stretch. So it's kind of, that's why they're just kind of in a I don't want to say volatile, because I do think they have somewhat of a higher floor just based on their defense, and even if Winston isn't great, I don't think they're going to be, I think they're clearly a better team than the Panthers. So I don't think they're going to stoop to a spot where they're going to fall below the Panthers, but I think there is a bit of volatility with Winston at quarterback, just not knowing what we're going to see.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's a fair take.
Yeah.
All right, ready to move on to the Panthers?
Yes.
All right, third up, Carolina Panthers win total is at 6.5, plus 105 to the over, plus 460 to make the playoffs, and they are 10-1 to win the NFC South. Coaching staff, so obviously they fired offensive coordinator Joe Brady in the middle of last season. There was kind of a power struggle between him and Matt Rule. Rule wanted to run the ball more. Brady wanted to air it out. Brady gets let go. Now the Panthers bring in Ben McAdoo, former Giants head coach. He was actually on the Cowboys coaching staff as a consultant last year, so he'll come in, take over the offense. In the offseason, they added, obviously, quarterback Baker Mayfield was the big one a couple weeks ago. Running back Deontay Foreman from the Titans gets some nice depth behind McCaffrey finally. They drafted Ike Ekwonu, offensive tackle, with their first pick, and then took a stab at Matt Corral in the later rounds. I'm not sure if we'll see him much now that Baker's there. And then they did lose 2 key pieces of the defense, cornerback Stephon Gilmore and edge rusher Hassan Reddick. So I think this is a defense with some talent on it, but obviously it did take some hits there. I feel like for me, so I did take a piece of the Panthers over when the Baker news came out. I could really go back and forth here. The more I look into this team, I have a case where I could make for the over. I have a case where I could make for the under. Do you have a lean one way or the other? Do you feel strongly? Because I kind of keep going back and forth. I could see it really going either way for this team, and I'll explain why after you go.
So like you, I grabbed a over 6 wins at plus 105 when the Baker news broke. And it was kind of one of those gut reactions. You get this and you're like, oh, that's a huge upgrade from Sam Darnold. He's better than
Sam Darnold. Yeah.
So if I had to go back, I would wait and maybe take the under now that it moved up to 6.5. I don't hate being at 6. I think there's a chance they win 6 games and maybe I get a push. But the more I dug into this team, I have some concerns. And I want to backtrack on something I said last week when we were talking about the Lions. I said I thought the Panthers were slightly a tier above the Lions, but I think they're in the same boat. So I just want to backtrack on that.
Thank you.
So I just want to backtrack on that after I did my dig in here. I don't want people
backtrack accepted.
Yes. So here's my concerns. The downgrade in the offensive line for Baker Mayfield. Mayfield was sacked 43 times last year, which was the 4th most among qualifying quarterbacks, behind what was one of the league's best offensive lines, who actually ranked 4th in pass block win rate, which measures the rate at which the offensive line holds their blocks for at least 2.5 seconds. So that tells you that the quarterback is holding the ball way too long. So if Baker's getting sacked 43 times and the line is ranked that high in pass block win rate, that's a concern. So Panthers ranked 29th in pass block win rate last year and allowed 52 sacks as a team, which was the 5th most in the league. So that right there is a bit concerning for me. We know Baker likes to hold on to the ball and try and make everything into a big play. And with this Panthers offensive line, that's not going to go too well. You're also going from what was a the best or top 3 run offense in the league to now what is a bottom half of the league unit. So that is a bit concerning. Now I know McCaffrey was out for a lot of last year, and that plays a part in that,
running the ball.
But it's still a bad offensive line that factors into it. Yes, McCaffrey makes a huge difference. So he's still a big upgrade on, like we were saying, over Sam Darnold on a team that did win 5 games last year with a combination of Darnold, the corpse of Cam Newton, and some PJ Walker sprinkled in there for fun. Their defense was statistically one of the better units in the league for the first half of last year, but I think it was a bit skewed to some early matchups against I think it was the Giants and the Jets and Texans. I think we're all sprinkled in there. So those were a little bit skewed. And like you said, they had a couple big losses on the defensive side with Gilmore and Reddick. You have J.C. Horn coming back off a broken foot and Dante Jackson on the other side. So it could be a decent secondary, but they have some tough matchups. This division has some tough matchups outside of their divisional schedule. So it's a tougher schedule for the Panthers. I think when I look through the schedule, in order for them to hit these 6 wins, I'm feeling like they're going to need to sweep the Falcons, which isn't out of the question. I think the Falcons are much worse than the Panthers, but it could easily, they're going to Atlanta between playing the Bucs and going to Cincinnati. So there's a bit of a sandwich spot in there. But the more I looked at it, I kind of wish I held off on just gut reacting and betting the over here.
Yeah, so just for reference, this division's cross matches are the NFC West and the AFC North. So yes, 2 of the better divisions in football. So you're not going to find a ton of easy games outside of conference or outside of division play. I kind of share a lot of the same thoughts as you. Like, case for the over. I do think the weapons on offense are really good. I know.
Top. What is it, Jeff? What did you say last year? Top 10
weapons.
Doing. Yeah. And how much money did we make betting on Robbie Anderson unders last season?
We did make a lot of money. Robbie Anderson.
Would you like to backtrack on that take from last offseason?
No, because DJ Moore is amazing. And Christian McCaffrey is too. So I still think the weapons are good. Year 2 of Terrace Marshall. He was a rookie wide receiver coming out last year that got a lot of hype. I think he could take a step forward. And I really like this Deontay Foreman signing. He was a guy that, multiple 100-yard rushing games towards the end of the year for the Titans last year. If McCaffrey goes down, all right, if McCaffrey went down last year, they had absolutely nobody behind him. Deontay Foreman is at least a serviceable NFL running back.
Hubbard, I mean, they had
Chuba Hubbard sucks.
Okay, but
he couldn't run for 35 yards.
So you're making a case for the over. So I just want to say, you're making your case for the over, and you're saying Deontay Foreman moves the needle.
I'm just saying it's a good piece to have. If you're in a situation where McCaffrey misses 2 games, it's not an automatic loss now because at least you can still run the ball. If you have Chuba Hubbard, you're basically just passing the ball every time. I'm not saying it's going to get them 5 more wins this season, but I'm saying it's a good position to be in. If your starting running back gets hurt, because all he does is get hurt for the last 2 years, now you have a serviceable backup. That's good.
Yeah, Deontay Foreman, career backup running back coming to save their season.
All right. I also like their secondary a lot. You already mentioned that. Case for the under. The reason that I'm scared to bet this team, like you said, the offensive line is definitely a concern for me. I think a lot of their success depends on Ike Ekwonu and can he come in and be a starting left tackle in the NFL. But I think Matt Rule as the head coach has a lot of volatility. There was some, strange reports last season that he wanted to run the ball 35 times. It was butting heads with Joe Brady. So I could kind of see him losing the locker room. He's actually the betting favorite for first coach fired. That's not really a market that's offered at a lot of legal sports books, but you can find it at some of like Bovada and stuff out there. So he's actually the betting favorite in this one. So I do think there's a case where like the Panthers start out the season like 2-5, Matt Rule gets fired and this whole thing just kind of snowballs. But I also think there's a lot of talent on this team where maybe the talent just wins out, and I could see them winning 6, 7, maybe even 8 games. I don't think they have quite enough of the ceiling to get into the playoffs, but I mean, Baker Mayfield's a pretty good quarterback. If we can get the Baker from 2 years ago that led the Browns to the playoffs, I don't see why this team can't win 8 games and at least make some noise in the NFC.
Make some noise. Whoa.
Make some noise in the sense of like you're looking at the playoff picture week 15 and they're in the hunt.
All right. I want to talk about Matt Rule for a second because this Baker trade goes through, and it's like, oh, they got Baker Mayfield. He's a starting quarterback.
I can't.
Matt Rule says, pump the brakes, everybody. We're having a quarterback competition. I mean, this stuff, I can't stand the quarterback competition. Like, Baker Mayfield is the starting quarterback for the Panthers. I don't care what. You're not trading for Baker Mayfield and then making him your backup.
What benefit does it do for them to say this competition? Like, I don't get it.
I don't know. He's trying to hang on for the last few months so they don't have to admit paying Sam Darnold was a terrible signing or trade, whatever they did. It's just, I can't stand the quarterback competition stuff when obviously Mayfield is a starter. You're not fooling anyone. The reporters aren't idiots. We're not idiots. We know Mayfield's going to be out there week 1. Can you imagine playing the Browns week 1 and them trotting out Sam Darnold? Come on.
No, because that week 1 game is going to be amazing. Baker versus old team. Like, that's really fun. That worked out really well.
It will be fun. And I think he might be in some trouble against that defensive line and the Panthers offensive line. But all right, let me test the waters here. So better team or more wins, who do you think? The Panthers or a team we already talked about, the New York Giants?
That's a really good one. I would probably say the Giants. I think the Panthers are a better team, but I think the schedule for the Giants is a little bit easier. So I would probably say the Giants by a tiny, tiny margin. But if they played on a neutral field, I would make the Panthers a favorite.
Okay, well, they do play in New York week 2.
Okay.
The
Panthers start to the season is not that bad either.
No.
Home against the Browns.
They have 4 home games out of their first 5 games, but then you go San Francisco, Rams, Bucks. That's a tough stretch.
Oh, it definitely gets tough. But at least to start the year, it's not like they're starting off like the Bucks are. So
yeah.
They have
all right, Panthers or the Lions?
I'd probably have to go Lions.
Okay.
Where would you go on those two?
Kind of like you. I feel like, no, I think the Giants have the potential to be a better team than the Panthers, but the schedule definitely is. If we're talking wins,
yeah, I think you have to go with the Giants.
I think you go Giants because of the schedule. The better team is pretty tough.
It's really close.
Like, I'm trying to think of who has more upside. Who has more upside out of those teams? I think
it's the Panthers. I think they just have more talent. I don't think the Giants have enough talent to achieve like a really good season.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
I think the Panthers have some upside.
Yeah, I thought they did, and then I kind of dug into it, and I just don't like the Panthers anymore. But
I just see a lot of downside when I dig in. I still think the upside's there. I just
that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
All right. Anything left to say on the Panthers?
Nope.
All right. Last team in the division, the Atlanta Falcons, a 4.5 win total, one of the lowest in the league. 8-1 to make the playoffs, 25-1 to win the division. Off-season moves. They lost a lot on offense. Quarterback Matt Ryan traded to the Colts. Wide receiver Russell Gage to the Bucks. Calvin Ridley suspended for the season. And then on defense, they lost edge rusher Dante Fowler, linebacker Boyasade Olakun. Did you know that he led the NFL in tackles last year?
I would have never guessed.
I actually remember betting his tackle prop over 1 or 2 weeks when I got on that bandwagon. So he was actually a pretty big loss. I mean, guy that leads the league in tackles, you want to lose him. And then they lost quarterback Fabian Moreau. Additions to the roster. They added
whoa. You missed someone.
Who?
Massive loss in the backfield. Mike Davis departing for Baltimore.
I miss his unders already. He will be sorely missed by me. Additions to the roster: quarterback Marcus Mariota from the Raiders, running back Damian Williams, wide receiver Brian Edwards also from the Raiders, and then they drafted Drake London in the first round, and then Desmond Ridder a couple rounds later. Maybe we'll see him later in the year if Mariota struggles or inevitably gets hurt. Where are you at here on the Falcons? They're projected to be pretty bad. I think they're going to be pretty bad. You got any leads either way?
Oh boy. My initial reaction was this team won 7 games last year because I knew
the same thing when I looked at the record.
I know they lost some players and stuff, but 7 games last year, I was shocked to see that.
It's impressive.
So I compared that. Shout out to Dave. I looked at their expected wins and Pythagorean wins from last year, which were both 4.7. So they did technically outperform.
They were like the worst point differentials in the league, but still won. Yeah, yes. I remember this now.
Yeah. So they averaged 18 points per game and allowed 27 points per game, both bottom 5 in the league. They were bottom 10 in total yards and yards allowed. They had, you want to take a guess how many sacks they had on defense last year?
29, less than 2 a game.
That would be 18 sacks, my friend.
Wow. That's like 1 sacks per game.
Pretty unbelievable. So you talk about a team with almost zero upside, and the under, when I last checked on their 4.5 wins, was at plus money. So that's looking pretty enticing. I mean, you look up and down their schedule, and I don't see a ton of they got the Seahawks. They're in Seattle, which I don't like them in that matchup.
That's not a great game for them.
They got the Panthers twice, who we just talked about.
They're going to be favored in 1 game this season.
Home against the Bears.
That's it. I mean, can you find another game where they would be favored? I mean, home against the Panthers, they'll probably be like 1 or 2 point dogs.
Home against the Panthers,
I mean, that's the only other game I could even think would be close. Home against the Steelers, same thing, probably a short dog.
You're probably right. So
that's bad.
At plus money on the under 4.5 wins, I was on the fence, but now that we're kind of on here just talking about it out loud, I think I am going to pull the trigger on it.
Yeah, I bet they're under 5 when it opened. I kind of like 4.5 at plus money too. I don't mind that at all.
What were the odds at 5 when you got it?
Let's see. Under 5, I have minus 120. And then I have it under 5.5, but that's like minus 150.
Okay. Yeah, I think I like the plus money.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. But yeah, I mean, just you look at this team, massive questions at the quarterback position. I have my concerns on whether Marcus Mariota is even a starting caliber quarterback. And if he is, like, this is a guy that was playing 2 to 3 plays per game in like a gadget role and was still getting hurt multiple times. I think he dealt with 2 different hamstring injuries last season on like 4 plays on the season. So I think and he's obviously playing against one of the worst offensive lines. I think he's only a matter of time before he gets hurt. Desmond Ridder does not project to be an NFL starter, at least not at this point in his career. The offense, I would say it's one-dimensional at best. The receiving core, Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Cordero Patterson coming out of the backfield. Okay, I have questions with the quarterback getting them the ball, but I think they at least have some weapons there. But this running game is going to be absolutely atrocious. Projected to have the 28th ranked offensive line, the worst collection of running backs imaginable. You have a 31-year-old Cordero Patterson who was already getting his reps limited towards the end of last year. Damian Williams is a career backup. Quadre Olison is back on the roster, and then a 5th round pick out of BYU, Tyler Algier. I think they're going to be lucky to run for like 3.5 yards per game. It's just going to be trying to throw the ball and probably not having much success. And then on defense, they ranked 30th in the NFL last season. They lost several starters. It's basically Grady Jarrett on the defensive line and AJ Terrell at cornerback, and then a bunch of guys that really shouldn't even be starting in the NFL. So
Casey Hayward, but he's 32 years old now. So
yeah, I mean, okay, that's fine. Like, their secondary is not terrible, but all in all, I mean, look, it's going to be a bottom 10 offense. It's going to be a bottom 10 defense. Their schedule is just brutal. Like we said, 1 game in the season where they're going to be favored, like even the game at Seattle, like I would comfortably pick Seattle in that game. So like you said, I think the under. I think this is probably like a 2-7 start. Saints, Rams, Seahawks, then you get Browns, Bucks, Bengals, Niners, Panthers, Chargers. Like, there's just a lot of really good teams in there. So I think maybe they start off 2-7, turn to Desmond Ridder, pick up another win or 2 late in the season, and try and draft a quarterback next year.
Yeah, and the one thing I like about taking their under is this is going to be the team early in the season that at least I'm going to be hammering opposing running backs against. They were terrible against the run last year, and I think they're going to be even worse this year. So in those matchups, when you're playing a team like Seattle, when you're playing a team like Chicago, if they're going to be able to come in and just run the ball, hand it to David Montgomery, hand it to Rashad Penny, you don't have to worry about Drew Lock or Geno Smith, who's ever going to be playing quarterback, or Justin Fields making mistakes if you can just come in and run the ball. So that's kind of what I like about a team like this, where their defense is not only just overall bad, but they're going to be terrible against the run. So it just takes so much pressure off opposing teams. So even Cleveland, I mean, you might have Jacoby Brissett playing quarterback, but Nick
Hand the
Chubb's
ball off 40 times.
Nick Chubb's going to be able to run for 200 yards behind one of the best offensive lines in the league. So you can still get the 5 on DraftKings, but it's minus 150. So I'll take the plus money on FanDuel right now for under 4.5.
Okay. I can see that. And for those of you that are in with us on the Bears to have the worst record in the league, that game, Falcons versus Bears in week 11, could be very predictive of who ends up winning that bet. So that will be one that we were closely paying attention to. Would you consider betting on the Falcons to have the worst record in the league? I'm pretty sure their odds were less than the Bears. I want to say they were like 5 or 6 to 1, but I can't find it right now.
Hold on, I have it. I just had. Okay, so they are 4 to 1.
4 to 1. Okay, so they're the second favorite.
It could certainly happen, but those aren't. I feel like for a bet like that, I just want better odds.
The Texans really that bad? I feel like I look at these markets, but like they're ranked as like the by far and away the worst team in the league. Like I look at the Texans and I look at the Falcons and the Bears. Like I don't really see a lot separating these teams in terms of being bad.
So I'll tell you what. The more I kind of I'm progressing through my all season research and everything. The Bears win total at 6. The Bears win total at 6.5 is just one of the more shocking lines so far I've seen in the offseason. So yeah, I lump the Bears right down there with the Falcons and the Texans. So getting them at the 11 to 1 for worst record is one of probably my favorite long shots so far. But I don't know, for those types of bets where there's so many different outcomes, 4 to 1, I'm not that intrigued by it.
Yeah, I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like the Texans aren't going to be as bad as people think.
I agree with that to an extent. Yeah, not to a point where I think they're going to surprise people, win the division, but I don't think they're that much worse than the Falcons or maybe even the Seahawks or the Bears.
You want to bet the Texans week 3 against the Bears?
It's in Chicago. I think last week I actually said it was in Houston.
It's in Chicago?
It is in Chicago. So yes, if we are getting if we get like a 3-point spread on that, I'll absolutely be. That's
plus
a spread that
3
might be
right now.
Oh baby, yeah, I would absolutely take Davis Mills there.
I think you might even be. I'm going to look around for a 3.5, see if I can find a nice money line. But I think that's going to be a spot where I'm on the Texans.
Yeah. So it's a good spot like early in the season to get these teams that we know are going to be bad, but the books aren't necessarily, no one knows how bad. So
yeah,
I mean, even the Falcons week 1 against the Saints are 5.5 point favorites right now. That could be a pretty favorable spot.
I hammered the Saints at -4 when that opened. That was one of my favorite bets on the openers.
So yeah, if Kamara's playing and they're just going to be able to hand it to Kamara and let Winston throw 15 passes and 4 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So, and Marcus Mariota starting his first game in a few years, and
yeah, good luck.
Yeah. So that's almost like a hesitation type line. 5.5 Falcons are at home. We don't really know how bad they're going to be, but yeah, there's a potential for it to be pretty bad.
Yeah. All right. Think that should wrap up our breakdown of the division. I did have a couple props I wanted to run by you.
Okay.
All right. How do we feel about Drake London under 4.5 receiving touchdowns at +110? Pretty low line. He's a big bodied receiver, 6'4", 220. I've seen some comparisons to like a Mike Evans type of guy. 3 seasons at USC. He scored 5, 3, and 7 touchdowns. So 15 total in 22 games. So not elite college production, but we have obvious concerns with the Falcons offense. I think they're going to project to be one of the bottom 5 scoring offenses. Brutal quarterback play. You look at what the Falcons pass catchers did last year with a significantly better quarterback. Cordero Patterson led the team with 5 receiving touchdowns. Of all the receivers and tight ends, Russell Gage had 4, Olamide Zaccheaus had 3, Calvin Ridley 2, and Kyle Pitts had 1 touchdown in 17 games. And it was ugly. So I think it's a pretty low number, but at plus money, I kind of like London under 4.5, just thinking about how many touchdowns are the Falcons realistically going to throw for an entire season, like 18, 20, like
Yeah, there's there's not going to be a lot to go around.
I mean, if they get to the red zone, like I think it's going to be Mariota running the ball in, them doing handoffs. Like I can't picture Mariota throwing 3 touchdowns in an NFL game in 2022. I just can't picture it.
Yeah, and rookie receivers typically start slow for the most part, if you're Jamar Chase or Justin Jefferson. But
but I don't think Drake London comes in with that kind of pedigree, even though he was a top 10 pick.
Yeah, and especially with Marcus Mariota quarterback. So yeah, these offenses where there's only going to be so many touchdowns, so many yards to go around, and the only really spot to look is unders. So any unders at skill positions at plus money on a team like this, whose points are going to be limited, I think you could make a strong case for.
Okay. I like it. Do we want to talk about DJ Moore at all? I know he was someone that you brought up in potentially taking an over on his season-long player prop.
Yes. So what? Let me see what I got it at. It was
so I have 1,075. Yeah. So for reference, like I currently have 59 bets on season-long player props so far, which I know is absurd.
59.
Yes. Would you like to guess how many of them are overs compared to unders?
How many are overs? I would say 10.
Only 6 overs so far. There's obviously, we talked about this before, there's way more outs betting under. So basically what I'm saying is if I bet an over, I'm really confident in that player. And DJ Moore is one of my 6 overs. I bet him over 1,075 yards. And I like him at 35-1 to lead the league in receiving, just in case Baker Mayfield's really good. But this is a guy that's put up 1,150 yards in 3 straight years.
I thought I was making the case for it.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I don't know if you had it ready to go.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. 1,150 yards plus in 3 straight seasons with a combination of Cam Newton, Kyle Allen, Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Darnold, and PJ Walker throwing him the ball. I don't care how low you are on Baker Mayfield. He is an obvious upgrade over all of those guys, and he's cleared this line by 100 yards in every season.
Hey, Andrew, you brought this bet to my attention last week. But why don't you tell everyone what you told me and why you're taking it?
Well, I wanted to give you the credit because I know you mentioned it, but I didn't know if you had all the stats and stuff in front of you. So I didn't want to set you up to fail and you'd be like, oh, yeah, DJ Moore's right.
No, you did it perfectly. You basically read my text message. But yeah, no, I think it's a great bet. I mean, when you're putting up over 1,100 yards with those quarterbacks you just mentioned, and now you're getting an obvious upgrade with Mayfield, I don't think you can go wrong. Barring injury, it should be an easy bet. And with the Panthers continue to struggle to run the ball like they did last year, just more incentive to pass the ball.
All right, anything left to say on the NFC South?
Nope. I'm glad we got through that because it was one of the divisions I was looking forward to the least, but
that was good. I think we did a good job.
No, it was good. It was good.
All right. That's a wrap for the NFC South. We will see everyone in another week where we're going to go to the NFC West,
or
are we still waiting?
The NFC. We'll cap off the NFC.
All right, so we're just done with waiting for the Niners to make a quarterback.
Yeah, decision. Trey Lance is starting.
Trey Lance, okay.
Yeah.
All right. NFC West next week. We will see you guys then. Don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Smash the like button on YouTube. Give us a follow on Twitter at BetRightPod. From Jeff and Rue, we are the Bet Right Sports Betting Podcast because every time you bet with us, you bet right.